We're now going to be hearing from the team from McLaughlin Harvey, Glenn, Carpgiane, and Geri, who have also been working with Morta for over 2 years now. I think I always learn when I speak to them, and everything from the language to the way that they approach implementation. I find always really inspiring, and I learn a lot from. So I'm really, really excited to have them share their perspective with you today. I'm just going to add them on stage. Hi, Glenn. Hi, Geri. Hi, Carpgiane.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Can you hear
Good
us
morning.
okay? Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you just fine.
It's
Thanks for
bad habits
joining.
we're teaching you, Mo. You say you always learn from us. It's the bad habits.
No, it's the good ones. It's the good ones. Awesome. Really, really glad to have you. Would you mind sharing screen, please?
I'm going to do that now.
Awesome. We're good to go. We
Right. Well,
made it.
then Geri can do the clicking, and I'll do the talking then.
Awesome. Thank you.
Right. Well,
Thank you very much.
apologies for that, folks. I'm not quite sure what was
No
going
worries.
on there. Probably something stupid at my side,
No worries.
Okay. Colin, thank you very much for your presentation there. There'll be a couple of similar themes here. And I suppose I have to thank you for doing all that hard work before the one-click integration, because we came on the scene whenever the one-click integration was available to connect into Viewpoint, and that's what really pricked our ears up about Morta, to be honest with you, but I'll come to that in a wee second. So digital construction, Glenn McCaffrey, digital construction director, McLaughlin Harvey. I have Geri Gardner, who's an information manager, and Carpgiane Dos Santos, digital construction manager, on the call. Do you want to click on to the next slide there? I suppose duty bound to tell you a little bit about McLaughlin and Harvey. I'll not dwell too much on this, but we've been around since 1853, 170 years. It's a private-owned company. Here's some facts and figures about it. Our turnover sits roughly about 800 million, or with 800 plus employees. 800 million is our turnover, 41 projects, and we have graduate trainee programs, so on and so forth. So we're a reasonable sized company, but we're maybe not just as big as some of the other companies that are on the call today. We have offices in Belfast, Glasgow, London, Bristol, and Birmingham. Our headquarters is Belfast, where the team are based. Glasgow would be the second biggest office, and then the rest are regional, based on where we're actually working. These are the frameworks that we would be on, and these frameworks probably drive a lot of the demand and the upskilling within our business in relation to information management. Well, not information management, because you should be upskilling that regardless, but in terms of ISO and the BIM thingy as well, I suppose really these frameworks drive the demand. These are the key sectors that we're involved with. So we have a fairly broad brush or broad church of sectors that we're involved with. Everything from stadia right through to life sciences, education, leisure, commercial, so on and so forth. We have a subsidiary company, Interior Fit Out, which is Workspace, and they work on smaller projects throughout the UK. And we also have a sports offering, Rockland, which do air domes, pitches, fabric type structures, so on and so forth. And that's probably our latest acquisition. So we have a fair degree of offering, and we would work as a digital construction team across all of those sectors. This is I'm going to touch a little bit on the people here, and then I suppose really the reason why Mo has asked us to speak, but this is our digital construction team. Whenever I first joined the business 5 years ago, it was me, myself, and I'll talk on how we built up our digital construction offering within the business. You've already met Geri and Carpgiane, and then there's a team below at the bottom end of that slide there, and these are the guys that now. In addition to this, we also have probably 9 or 10 digital technicians throughout the business, but these are the guys that are really driving the information management side of our business in terms of project information models, asset information models, COBie deliverables, so on and so forth. But we do have, for example, Genesis and Pierre Luigi in the Glasgow office, who do great work in the digital space for us in that particular region and sector as well. Well, I'm putting this up here because, yes, we were the winner of Digital Construction Contractor of the Year, or Digital Contractor of the Year. And I suppose this is really what sparked off the conversation with Mo. And he was kind of saying, look, can you come on and tell the journey of this? So we're not maybe going to dwell too much on the technicalities of Morta. We will talk a little bit about some of the things that we're using it for, but this is more about the journey of starting from scratch to where we are now, and I suppose really the types of things that we talked about in relation to this submission. Just to give you an idea of where we sit within the business, whenever I first started, I would have been in pre-construction because I was brought in to look at a couple of projects that we were in tender and had this, and I keep using the phrase BIM thingy, had this BIM thing, and nobody really understood exactly what it meant, what the implications of it was, what the risks or opportunities were. I'm an architect by trade with nearly 30 years experience. So I'm an old man, basically. But anyways, I was doing some information management work in a previous practice, and our paths crossed with McLaughlin Harvey through our architectural work. And we started to have conversations around this. And then I jumped ship to join McLaughlin Harvey. And the idea was coming in for 6 months to see whether they were actually serious about this or not. And well, we're now nearly 6 years into that journey. But the important thing here is we started down in pre-com, but the realization of what was needed to turn the business around in terms of information management, I very quickly moved up through the ranks as such to, and this is not me pat myself in the back, but it's just to, I suppose, demonstrate what's needed to affect change within a business. And very quickly we realized that I needed to be working at director level, reporting directly to the board to affect change within the business. And we work across all parts of the business: pre-construction, design, procurement, construction, and then asset handover as well. So back to basics. And I just want to really talk a little bit about why we exist or the problems that we faced. And I'm not going to tell you it's anything different than some of the problems you already face yourselves, but I just think it's maybe useful to see the journey that we've been on. So McLaughlin Harvey started out as probably a traditional contractor in that we didn't have very many design and build projects. In fact, we didn't have any. Now, this is even years before I joined the business. So generally speaking, we got a pack of information. Our contractual requirement was to make sure that we could build it, and it was in line with statutory requirements or in line with costs and everything. So we weren't really, you know, we didn't have the management of design and all of the information management nuances that come with that. But even setting that aside, we wouldn't have had the attitude that information is an asset in its own right. So even if we do take the design, build and operate, generally speaking, everyone starts out and they're creating information on the project. And the idea is that you really want to be having an upward trajectory. And in an ideal world, we're just gathering up that and aggregating information. And we're on this lovely trajectory. Towards the end of the project, we're handing over a lovely pack of information to everyone. But the reality is that there's drop-offs. And we are no different to every other business. There's drop-offs. Information is not particularly well managed. It's not treated as an asset in itself. And at each of these key handover stages within the business, we were finding that we were dropping off. And then you started again, and then you dropped off again, and then you started again. And the bottom line is, for our business, and like what Colin said there, information is the currency actually that we trade on every single day. And if you do not treat information as an asset and manage it correctly, it has a detrimental effect on program, cost, quality, and health and safety. And really, to be honest with you, those are the 4 pillars of every contractor out there. And you want to be ensuring that. And most problems that we find with program or with design or cost implications actually is all pretty much traced back to not having the right information in front of the right person at the right time to make key decisions based on the purpose as to why we need that particular information. And that's what was hurting us as a business. So we needed to get better at information management across the whole business. So what do we manage? same as everyone else, it breaks down to geometry, data, and documents. And I'm using some of the terminology here from the ISO, the project information model. We tend not to use, well, we try not to use acronyms and use all of that. We just try and drill into people. Like, we're looking after these three types of information: geometry, data, and documents. But with it has come new challenges. In terms of geometry, yeah, everyone was very happy receiving PDF drawings. And if they had a drawing, a 2D drawing in front of them, they were happy. But obviously, more and more consultants are using 3D authoring tools. And there's so much to be gained from that, but yet we needed to have the expertise to understand how to set all of that up properly at the start and how to manage that information for our own purposes, let alone the client's purpose at the end. The data was pretty much a new thing for us. Whilst I had delivered, and I'm going to use Kobe here just as the example, I had delivered that before in other projects. When we come to McLaughlin Harvey, we wouldn't really have processes or an understanding of exactly what that meant for us through the design, procurement, manufacture, construction, and handover, and then the usual for the documents. And no surprise then, obviously, with the handover of sorry, go back one there, Geri, if you can. With the clients now hard and fast deliverables in relation to information. They're not just looking for the physical, they're looking for the digital. And I'm not talking about digital twins here. I'm just talking that we have hard and fast deliverables in our projects. And I suppose that first project, and that's Coventry University there, the model that we're showing, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a second or two. But really, you know, we had to hand over record issue models, we had to hand over Kobe data, had to hand over O&Ms. O&Ms we would have been doing it anyways, but just new skills were needed within the business to manage these types of information. And what does it boil down to? Again, you'll have heard this, ISO 19650 boils down to being able to specify, deliver, and check. Now, I've added on another one there, evidence. And I suppose really just starting left to right here in terms of specifying whether the information's been specified, the information requirements, not just the actual employer's requirements for the building itself, but if those are being specified to us, we need to understand what it is we're meant to produce, who's responsible for producing it, when, so on and so forth. And equally, we realize that we needed to be much better at specifying those requirements to our supply chain, in particular, requirements relating to asset information models. Then we needed to put processes in place to deliver that, and we needed to check that information. I'm not telling you anything. In fact, I probably feel as if I'm telling you to suck eggs here, but I suppose it's just really saying back to basics. That's the message here. Just get back to basics. Do not get overwhelmed by ISO 19650. Do not get overwhelmed by all the technology that's out there. Just get your processes right. Look at what you're already doing and finesse and refine that. The evidence piece there is very, very important. And Colin touched on that a little bit in relation to the Building Safety Act and everything. But, you know, the golden thread of information, we need to evidence decisions that have been made on that journey for sustainability, for BREEAM, DREAM, WELS, BARD, neighbours, all that sort of stuff. You know, you set out on a journey with your sustainability plans and everything, but unless you can evidence and back up the decisions that you've made to acquire those credits, you're in trouble. So information management is key to everything that we do. So for McLaughlin Harvey, once we sort of got that mindset change that information is an asset, we started to look at what we needed to do as a business. I'm just going to build up a diagram here, an infographic that we use in the business to sort of explain to folks the importance of it. So if we know that we're looking after geometry, data, and documents, we then started to look at the people, the processes, and the tech that's needed to support that. You know, what people do we need in, so on and so forth. Then it has to be founded in standards, and this is a really important part of the overall process and everything. as a business, you will have your own standards, you'll have your own standard operating procedures and everything, but there's lots of, well, obviously ISO standards and everything. So we started to take a good hard look at that, and we needed to make sure that our people and our processes aligned with the standards that we are actually trying to adhere to as well. Then the last piece in the jigsaw is really the technology. Do not allow technology to be the tail that wags the dog. And the whole idea for this and instilling this in folks, and I'll give you an example of this. We were just reviewing our field management tools last week, and we had a special group pulled together to look at it. And there were certain individuals in there were just saying, well, just tell us what the technology can do, and then we'll use that technology. And I'm going, no, you need to tell us what your process is. What's your strategic objective for managing information in the field? Look at the process. Then we will look at what the technology can do to support that. And the idea being then that we have better information models that contain coordinated geometry data and documents created by our people, process, and technology, working collaboratively to agreed standards, and I can't underestimate standardization. You heard Colin talk about it. It's important at business level, it's important at a strategic level, and it's important in terms of government objectives and standards that already exist. And then the last part is using appropriate technologies. Next slide there, please, Geri. So I'm going to talk quickly here about how we went about this. So on the left-hand side is the steps that we took to implement that prioritizing information. On the right is the different pieces of technology and things that we're doing. But first of all, people. I started in the business, me, myself, and I. So it's very hard to turn a business around on your own, to be honest with you. So we started to build that team, but we had to have clear objectives as to what we were wanting to do. And there's nothing that will drive change as quick as a set of employers' requirements. So on that Coventry job, we had hard and fast deliverables. So that's whenever I went to the marketplace to seek expertise and consultancy and everything. And you'll hear from a couple of these. Well, you'll definitely hear from Rob Jackson. So that's whenever a working relationship came up with Rob Jackson and Emma Hooper, which was Bond Brand Digital back in the day. So really, to be honest with you, we sort of brought them on board as information management consultants on that particular project. And the objective with them was very clear from the start, that we wanted to work together to not only fulfill the requirements of that particular project, but help me on the journey to build up our offering within the business at various stages and everything. So the next stage was to look at standards, as I talked about there. So we looked at the ISO standards, we looked at IFC, we wanted to have Open BIM as fundamental to what we're doing. Emma Hooper was great at upskilling myself and our team members on IFC. So it was a real driver in what we were doing. We then started to pull together our information management templates. At that time, Rob had sort of been looking at an information hub, which I think I don't know whether Rob's going to talk about it later on or not, but have been looking at that. So, you know, we like that idea of everything being cloud-based, but we worked to develop that to suit ourselves and somewhat simplified the offering. Now, I'm not saying that what Rob had created was complicated. I'm not saying that in the slightest. I'm just saying that, again, it had to match our processes. It had to match what we wanted to do as a business. So we developed those templates and they're rolled out on every single project. And the team that I showed you earlier are responsible for populating all of that. So that's our BIM execution plan, exchange information requirements, information standards, production methods, procedures, so on and so forth. And all of that is written into our appointment agreements. We then started looking at the technologies that could support that. As a business, we have to be software agnostic. We let the designers design and we let them use the tools that they want to use, hence why IFC became important. And we developed our CDE. We had Viewpoint was already in the business, but it may not have been being used to its full potential. So Geri put an awful lot of hard work into the background here to actually get proper workflows, and we worked with our operations teams to ensure that the workflows matched what we needed to do. And yes, there is the national annex as part of that, and the file naming convention, status codes, so on and so forth. But we built up the technology to match our processes, and then into check-in and reporting. And this is really where Morta come in for us. Morta has helped us with our check-in and reporting, pulling together dashboards, so on and so forth. And then the final step, whenever we had all of this put together, was, well, we were able to deliver. So it's been a journey that we have been working with consultants on. Part of that journey. We now have an in-house team where we do most of this ourselves. And it means now that, and the reason why I'm saying that is that it's important for a main contractor to be able to self-deliver as such, because it's important. We find that it's good for our relationships with our supply chain and our subcontractors, and we now use consultants, not necessarily on just the delivery part of it, but actually to bring real added value to the business, to assess our processes and help us get better at things. Next slide there, please. So on to how Morta has helped us, and I'm going to hand over to Geri and Carpgiane to go through a few slides, then I'll come back in at the end here. Just to talk about stakeholder engagement. But really for us, plan versus actual is so important in this business. And we had looked at Morta in the early days, but back then it was more like looking at the documentation and everything. But whenever the integration started to come in the API with Viewpoint, we really set up and went, actually, this could really help us. This could be a game changer in what we're wanting to do. And also the ability to be able to connect that to Power BI and fire out various dashboards across our business at project level, which then go into business intelligence, similar to yourselves, Colin, in terms of what you're talking about. So we're able to put proper optics on what we're actually doing, and it's no longer subjective. It's just the truth as to where we are. And we're not going to recover the same ground or cover the same ground as Colin, but one of the fundamental ways in for us was our information delivery plan. And so I'll move on to the next slide here, and Geri will take over from here. But this is really our standard operating procedure in relation to information delivery plan and some of the key objectives that we hit, so on and so forth. So I'll hand over to Geri then. Oh, can you get an easier platform for us to use the next time?
I think, yeah.
Sorry, I just needed to unmute myself there.
We moved off the floor, so we weren't getting disturbed by everyone on the floor, because people have a habit of walking up to us even when we're presenting, and we're working off single screens here, so we're having to dive in and out here. Apologies, folks.
Okay, sorry about that. Oh, yeah. Just to, give you a wee reminder of what we spoke about. Okay, so as Glenn had mentioned previously, processes are fundamental to what we do. You can see here on the left-hand side, we had a process in place before we even looked at any of the technologies that we were going to use. Along the way in looking into those technologies, we found Morta, and we realized that Morta would be able to help us with our information delivery plan process and help us refine and streamline that process. So all of our TIDPs are now completed on Morta by our supply chain. Morta automatically aggregates all of that data into one MIDP. Our design managers would then step in. They would evaluate all that data on the MIDP, and they would agree predecessors or dependencies. They then will baseline all of those deliverables, add in all of our dates against our program. We then have we have a function built into Morta where we can assign works package codes. And one of the great things, as Glenn had mentioned, is that we have an API connection to Viewpoint, which allows us to import the works package codes as keywords into our CDE, which is Viewpoint. That then allows our commercial team to actually filter data directly on Viewpoint. Our supply chain will then go ahead and generate all of their information, and they will then upload it to Viewpoint. So just to show you here, this is what our Morta IDPs look like. As you can see, as you know, the Excel word gets thrown around a lot, but it's a much easier to use and better version of Excel as far as we are concerned. We've had great feedback from all of our supply chain that they would rather use this system. Our design managers are really positive about it. Overall, in general, I think everyone that within our business that has been using it to date has just found it very user friendly, and it's just a good system to use. And this is what it looks like. This is Viewpoint for projects. This is where all of our deliverables are uploaded, and then all of our dates, actual dates, would be then imported back into Morta into our MIDP. So you can then see where we have got to with our Power BI dashboards. So these are currently in beta, but this is one on screen which we have set up to report on all of our drawings on a particular project. So we use this dashboard to show where deliverables are at critical points within each of our workflows within the CDE. We have versions for drawings, for inspection test plans, RAMs, and so on. We can filter all the data dependent on what type of data it is. And the great thing about these dashboards is that it allows that connectivity within all parts of the business. And it also allows that connectivity from procurement through to design and through to handover. So we always have that one single source of the truth, which is being brought in from Morta. So that's our basic IDP process and how we use Morta, our CDE, and Power BI to connect all of that data together. So there are some other things that we do in regards to the data, which I'm going to pass on to Carpgiane, and he will go through that for us.
Okay, Geri. Thank you. Can you just make sure you mic there as well, just for me? Musical chairs here. Grand. So we would be using Morta now for a slightly different purpose. So whenever we have to deliver a project that has any data deliverables, obviously we need to be able to verify and validate that data and that information before it goes over to the client. We are still using Slavery to do that, simply because we've built certain mechanisms and automations behind the scene to make that as productive as possible. So we're finding we were hard to move away from that. But if more ever gets anything that's able to do that, we'll obviously explore it. So we're using Slavery to do the verification validation, like I said, and then Morta is used then as a reporting mechanism to our subcontractors and our consultants. And then Power BI, then the harness information from Morta is used then to display that information and track any progress and trends. Okay, Next slide there, Geri. Okay. So so like I said, we still would be using our processing slavery to actually check the information, and then we then take that information and put it directly into Morta, and we display it in these tables here, as you can see on the screen. The advantage of using Morta to do this is because obviously the teams are already added onto the platforms, already have access to the hub. This mitigates us sending them any further Excel sheets or add them to any other additional platforms. The less platforms that need to be added to, the better. Okay, so and the information can be displayed live as well as we check it from our models in Slavery. As you can see there, we have basically displayed what we are checking there. We've displayed what's verified and what isn't compliant, and then we also would include what's part of the inclusion and exclusion list for Kobe or the bespoke register that we're delivering, and then we would then add in any suggestions that we would think is helpful for them to correct their mistakes. Now, the main advantage for us to using Morta to do this is the usability. It's the fact that it's very easy to modify and customize. So if you have to deliver or show any bespoke views or tables, it's very easy to do using bespoke scripts and the regex expressions as well. Okay. Next slide for me, Geri. Okay, so this is an example of another use that we are currently using for Morta. So when we have to deliver any bespoke asset registers, we would compile them in Morta. If the deliverable is just the register itself, we do it all in Morta. But if we need to send information back into the model, we would use their integration to do that as well. So in this example, this is a register for one of our live projects, which has been made completely on Morta. And where this works really well is if you go to the next slide for me, Geri, is we can take different views of that register and then tailor to each subcontractor, so they can then log in and put in their manufacturer's information and site information directly onto this view. So in turn, what they're doing is they're directly populating the actual register, as opposed to populating a spreadsheet which has to find its way back into the asset register. Another advantage of this is that we have set up different checks using regular expressions to check the information as they are populating it as well. Yeah, so that makes life a lot easier for us too. Next slide for me, Geri, please. Okay, so as Glenn mentioned before, we take the stance of letting the designers the design. So we will be using more the information we take out from our data checks more to track trends and progress as they are populating information to the models itself. So we've got certain automation sitting behind the scenes that as soon as they upload a model onto Viewpoint, we're able to run our automated data checks and then display the information to Morta and then to Power BI as well. So we can then track the trends very easily without having to engage them every single time we're doing the data checks. So we can easily see there if that red line there for things that aren't correct, if that line is straight, it means that there's no progress being made. So that's when we tend to engage to see what's going on and if they need any help or any guidance. Or aim here is to make the red go down and the yellow there for verified entries go up to meet the blue. So yeah, so that was a very whistle stop tour of the way we're using Morta to report our data checks. But you know, it looks like a very simplified version, but there's been a lot of work that's been on behind the scenes between the team here to make that happen. So yeah, that's my bit. I'll hand it back off to Glenn to take us home.
Sorry, I'm just conscious there of time. Just want to mute there. Conscious of time there. Sorry, we messed up a wee bit there on the technology on our side, so please forgive us for running over a little bit. I suppose really it's back to basics for us. It's people, process, then technology. There's a few things coming in the comments there, and I think there was one come in from Brett King in relation to, and this little piece I'm going to say now hopefully answers your question, Brett, in terms of site engagement and everything. Because we've approached this as a information management and looking at it as an asset, and looking at our current processes and everything, the fact that I report directly to the board is that we have a top-down, bottom-up approach. And essentially, we have invested a lot of time working with our operations directors who are essentially responsible for the delivery of the projects. And then working underneath those guys, you have the project leads, so those are the project managers, contracts managers, and they all are invested and work with us on a regular basis to develop processes and support and technology, and support technology to support those processes. So any processes we put in place are born out of making their life more streamlined on site, and it has to be purpose driven. And then if you take it to supply chain level, there's two approaches to this. Number one is in their appointment agreement. So they're going to work with us, they have to do it. But we also have a supply chain charter that's developed. So we sit down with the supply chain, we're saying that if you use, we undertake to trade you on our CDE. If you use our CDE collectively, this is what we will gain. Similar to the Morta, we basically say, look, if we all get together and work collaboratively on our IDB, our information delivery plan processes, or our data checks, so on and so forth, this is what we can achieve together. So it's buy-in. It's not easy. It's quite difficult, and you will always get pushback. But we're lucky that we have the backing of the board, and because we went back to basics and go people, process, tech, I think that's how we're making the steps forward. We have a long way to go. We still make plenty of silly mistakes, but that's it. So Mo, sorry for going over our time there.
No worries at all. Thanks for everything you shared, to be honest, and for the experience you shared with everyone. I think one of the things, I'm sure everyone would have seen this, like in the stock. I think one of the things that I always notice when I speak to you is your emphasis on just speaking in plain language. I think like the way you describe it, from evidencing to planning, like I think these are just basic words that every single person would understand, whether they're a design manager or a sustainability manager or a commercial manager. They know the importance of these things, and I think that's exactly why you're succeeding at embedding information management and managing your project. So thanks a lot for sharing that. That was exactly like one of the core reasons why I really wanted to have you in this. I also like the emphasis you put on things like tracking and reporting and just making sure that that's right. Ultimately, that's what defines whether your project succeed or not. And yeah, so thanks a lot for joining us. Thanks for sharing, all of you. Really, really appreciate it. And thanks for joining us today. Unfortunately won't have the time to go into questions because we're a bit behind schedule.
That was a deliberate move on our behalf. Okay.
Thank you very much for joining, and
no problem.
Yeah, have a really good day. Thanks for being with us on this journey.
Thank you. No problem.
All the best.